This is the Coming Home Podcast with John Allen. And here we are, everybody, with my guest, Lisa McEwen. This is Coming Home with John Allen. You may be listening to this on the radio, you may be listening to it on a podcast platform, or you may be watching it on YouTube. But no matter where you are, here we are. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Lisa, for coming. How you doing?
I'm great, John. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I just love it.
Well, I just love having you on the show. This is your second appearance. And as I've been telling you all along, I am such an admirer of the work that you do, both as a songwriter. Let me just list up what you do. You are an established Nashville songwriter. You are an established solo artist. You're a podcaster with your podcast called The Successful Songwriter Within. And you are the creator of a course which is called, well, it's a multifaceted course, but the main thing that you're promoting now is called the 5-Day Heart-Centered Songwriting Challenge. You have a handful of things that you're juggling at the moment. How's it going with all of that? That's a lot to do.
It is a lot to do. I guess I like to do, that's just the way I've always been. I like a lot on the go, and that's what I do. But yeah, it's going great. You know, I mean, I really like to make some time for songwriting. And, you know, sprinkle in, you know, the songs that really hit me in the gut, I like to now release as a single. So I did, oh my goodness, I guess I released 3 in the past year, and I'm going to do another one at Christmas and stuff.
Oh, another one coming up for Christmas. Okay. Yeah.
I love Christmas music so much. And every Christmas that comes around, I'm like, you know, I really need to do a Christmas something. You know, I'd love to do a Christmas album, but
I like this thing that musicians are doing. It's very popular here in Norway that artists will release a Christmas song or two, sometimes as much as a whole EP or LP.
Yeah.
And it's become, I guess I never really thought about it before, but since I've been here in Norway and because it's so popular, I always look forward to that Christmas season. Who's coming with what, you know?
Exactly, because you can always remix a classic, right? Or you can write your own.
Yeah.
And it always sneaks up on me. But this year in July, I was like, I am doing this. I am not going to put it off. I got to make sure it gets done by the end of the summer so that I'm ready to rock. So yeah.
There you go.
So yeah, I'll be doing that. And then absolutely doing, it's my music and mindfulness business. So where I'm helping songwriters basically, you know, let's say 10 years ago or so, I wish I had the sort of resources that I'm helping and hoping to provide for other performer and songwriters with the mindfulness techniques. And honestly, it can play into even if you're not a songwriter, because all of these different techniques, they're like life skills. And
well, sure, exactly. Yeah. You know, as a musician, of course, I'm attracted to the type of work you do, but just as a human being, there's so much to gain from that line of thinking. If you were to talk to someone who's not a musician, but you want to see if they're interested in your work, how would you present yourself and what you do to that non-musician?
Yeah, I mean, let's just think about it. Our days are so busy and we're so overwhelmed. And to say that I'm removed from that is completely wrong. I am the one, as you just
listed. You're doing it. Yeah, you're juggling a lot. Yeah.
I am overwhelmed. I am busy. You know, the screens constantly. I have 3 kids. I've, you know, a lot on the go. And what we all do. There's really nobody that doesn't. And so using different mindfulness techniques, it just helps you go through smoother the anxiety, the rejection. And, you know, yes, musicians have that exceptional amount of rejection maybe that we go through, but everyone does deal with it in one way or another. And it just sort of helps you cope. I don't know how else to say that we're all going to deal with it and you can't get around it.
Well, break it down. What is mindfulness and what are mindfulness techniques?
Okay. So there is an actual definition. I should pull it up for mindfulness. But to me, it really is that connecting with yourself on the inside and being present, which is a huge challenge.
Isn't that another way of saying it is not just living life, but being in touch with life and your life specifically, being in touch with it, being the puppet master, if you will, of your own existence.
Yes. And so mindfulness, and it kind of encapsulates quite a few different things. Yeah. But the techniques that I have, if I were to, you know, write them all out, I realized I was doing all of these things. And then it dawned on me like, oh, okay, there's a name for this. These are mindfulness techniques. So things like meditation, visualization, affirmations, which are so huge and so simple and extremely powerful. What else? Breathing techniques.
Yes.
Again, these are very simple things that we.
So it's not just a mental thing; it's a physical thing. That physical act of being aware of your breathing connects. It connects the physical with the mental.
Exactly, and we so quickly lose touch of our physical and our mental that we are all. It's all one. They all work together.
Now, am I correct in saying that you are on a bit of a fitness kick these days?
Yes. We were kind of talking about that a bit.
And I've seen a little bit on your Instagram. So let's get into this a little more. Again, this applies for musicians primarily, but it also applies for, for your everyday man and woman in the streets. You don't necessarily have to be a musician. And again, this is what I think is so attractive about what you do, because it can apply to everyone regardless. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about the connection between the physical and the mental or emotional, and this whole thing with visualization? You mentioned visualization. Mm-hmm. How do you apply this?
Okay. So first, I really do want to dive into a little bit of this fitness thing, because for a very long time, I was so like, I don't need to work out. Who cares? No big deal. Like, who has time for that? Or even who wants to? Yeah. It doesn't feel good. Yeah. So why would I do it?
It's easy to not work out.
Yes. And it's okay. So we'll definitely get to the visualization, because that's been a really important part of all that. Yeah. But I want to say that for a very long time, especially during COVID and the isolation period and stuff, and I think it almost became this sort of joke thing online of like, drink some wine and get through it and eat all you want sort of thing. And you know what? We were all trying to cope. And even with all the techniques, like I slipped by the wayside myself. I was not just eating because it was, let's just sit around and eat. It was like a coping mechanism, truly. Like I thought it'll make me feel good. I'm just going to polish off this bag of chips. It'll be fine, or I'll have that glass of wine and it'll take the edge off. Yeah, but then it becomes these habits. And so it's like I was losing the connection of the mind and the body, and kind of convincing myself it feels good, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be groggy and not with your energy. Yeah. And so, okay, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No, go ahead. I'm listening. I'm loving this. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so it took me a long time, but I think I hopefully finally, started figuring out when I treat my body and I do actually push it that little bit to work out, it can actually feel good. And I'm not saying I don't eat chips anymore.
Sure.
It's still, you struggle with that your mind is telling you it's good and it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
But once you realize that, doing these physical activities actually do feel good, and then they really are helpful for your mental stability as well, it all kind of comes together. And the visualization, that is key, because I've been getting up really early to work out. So if you don't go into it mentally, even prepping it beforehand, you're not going to, I love hitting snooze.
Yeah.
So you got at nighttime, I'll visualize, I'm going to feel good in the morning. Visualize myself getting my workout stuff on, and not just going down to my basement to do it, but feeling good. I visualize myself feeling good. So it's like I'm getting there before I'm there.
Well, there really is something to that. I implement that in my career as a power lifter.
Yeah.
Talk about that. I can think back to 2 years ago. I got the Norwegian all-time record for squat, and for 6-8 months before that, I had this mental mantra of visualization, picturing myself walking onto the platform, grabbing the bar, getting under it, lifting it off, deep breath, squat, stand up, put the bar back. And that just went over and over in my mind, so that when the time actually came to perform the lift, after 6-8 months of visualization, it's like it was already done. Exactly. And of course, there was the physical preparation, but that right there, I think, is a good example of how the physical and the mental can be put together. And if you get them to jive, if you get them in that symbiosis, it makes your task, it makes your goals easier to achieve. It makes your tasks a little bit lighter. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're not going to, you don't have to physically work hard
Yes.
or
Yeah.
physically, not even work hard, but physically do it. You still got to
You
physically
still have
show
to do
up.
it. You still have to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's amazing how powerful our mind is. It just makes it easier. It makes it more enjoyable. So then you're just more willing to do it, and then you'll do it more. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm wondering, just curious to ask you,
Yeah.
was it in front of a lot of people? Like, did you have to deal with nerves? Because I can visualize, but then you still have to sort of, your mind and your body's on that subconscious level. Okay, you've done it in your mind a million times. You still have to breathe through it though, because sometimes those nerves set in. Yeah. So I'm just curious.
No, there was a good sized crowd there on that day. I don't know how many people, but a lot. But yeah. I'm so good at, if I can brag a little bit, well, it's not bragging if it's true. I'm very good at focusing, both during regular training sessions for powerlifting, but also the day of, on the platform on competition day. It doesn't matter to me how many people are in the crowd. I may have a coach who is with me that day and I'm listening to them. But then when I start that approach, that physical walk towards the platform, it's just me and the weight that has to be lifted. And it is a very productive form of tunnel vision. A lot of people use tunnel vision in a negative context, but in a situation like that, that kind of tunnel vision, that kind of focus it optimizes my physical output. So it's not for me that feeling of having to perform is very inward. I'm not performing for that crowd out there. I don't care who they are. I don't even see them. I don't hear them. Everything is internalized.
Yeah. So then you totally understand how powerful. Yeah,
absolutely. Definitely. So I can see how this would be applicable to an athlete like myself. I can see how it would be applicable to the average citizen out in the streets. But how does that process work for the musician or songwriter?
Yeah. So the thing is, I realize, so much of us as musicians deal with these sorts of things. So for example, I really enjoy writing by myself. And so meditation helps me get out of my head as far as like, oh, this better be good, or there's no sense in writing that line. It's no good. It helps you tap inward with that sort of thing. And it pushes all of that out of the way. In the co-writing situation, which I know a lot of people can get in a co-write where they get in a good rhythm of the same people and they feel good, but there's always that starting point and maybe they're nervous to write with somebody.
Sure, there's that getting to know them process. You don't know them until you know them. And when you don't know them, there's certain things that have to be dealt with. Yeah,
and I think people, if they can go into that with like no problem, good for them. But I personally, that vulnerability and you want to show up and you want to present yourself in the best light. You want to have the best music ideas and stuff like that. So, all of these different techniques I teach helps writers with that. And what about performing? That's a huge thing. And I'm obviously the more I do it, the more comfortable I am.
Sure.
Everybody seems to struggle or even a little bit with the performing, just depending what the situation is in front of tons of people. And you know what? Even people are doing, online a lot more these days.
Yeah.
And even that's nerve-wracking.
Sure. Actually, it can be more nerve-wracking than being live if you get in your head and you start thinking, this is the internet. There could be potentially millions watching now.
Exactly. See? And who knows, it could go viral. And then what? So many people. Yeah. So, there's different techniques of getting yourself calmed down and so that you can focus, just like you're saying, so that you are connecting with yourself and then you're connecting with your audience to the best of your abilities. And then also different things about connecting with people in the industry. Again, this is still things that I work through, but reaching out to people and those are people skills.
Sure.
Yeah, and the best way to be able to do that is to be yourself, connect with yourself so that you can connect with other people. So these are all the sorts of things that I love teaching and then I'm sort of trying to help put out there and bring to the world.
What is it that set you on the path towards teaching? Because for quite some time you were the practitioner. You were out there. You were writing your songs. You were writing songs with others and alone. You were performing. What is it that pushed you into this avenue of teaching?
It's interesting. There's that saying, I think Eckhart Tolle says, what you resist persists.
Ah,
And forever, I was always like, I'll never be a teacher. I'll never teach music. That sort of mentality of like, I'm not a true artist if I'm a music teacher, blah, blah, blah. So for many years, I just thought there's no way I'll do that. Well, sure enough.
sure enough.
I actually started teaching guitar lessons and voice lessons. And, because people say, wow, you're really good at that. How do you do that?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, all right, well, I'll teach you. No problem. Yeah.
Which one is easier, teaching guitar or teaching voice?
Easier. Actually, guitar, I suppose, because it's physically on the outside, whereas your voice is something that's your instrument and it's within you.
I tell people all the time, I feel that voice is the most complex instrument.
Yeah.
So for you to be in a position where you can actually teach that, I mean, hats off to you.
A lot of people do.
And by the way, you have a beautiful voice. I love the way you sound. And for those of you listening to this on the radio, you're going to hear some of Lisa's music during the course of this program here. But you have a beautiful voice, and my respect for you just grows. Because I didn't know you taught voice. I think you had mentioned before that you taught guitar at one point, but I didn't know you were a vocal coach as well. Amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, I just teach it to people in my area and then a little bit online. And then I realized how much I love that, personal development stuff. And I was like, for so long, I kept thinking, how do I pair this together? Music and this. And then it just kind of came together one day. And I thought, I'm going to put this. I don't know if there's people out there, other songwriters, performers like me. I'm going to put it out there. It seems to be pretty powerful, so I'm going with it. Yeah.
Well, you're doing a good job, and I see how you're reaching people online. Let me ask you this: over the last 18 months, because of quarantining and isolation and stuff, there's been a benefit of that, I guess, is that people who are working with their business online, it has actually opened up a few doors. It's made that road easier to navigate because there's more people at home. There's more people using the internet. Mm-hmm. Isn't this a golden time for what you're doing with music and mindfulness?
Exactly. I think before all of that, I would have thought, oh man, who's local that would really be into this?
Yeah.
And now
it's just worldwide. They can be
worldwide.
Anywhere. Yeah.
And same for me with learning. It's like I can learn from anybody. That's the coolest thing.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Lisa's sitting in Canada. I'm sitting here in my studio in Norway. A shining example of what you can do with the internet. I see online in some of the singer-songwriter groups, there's people from, from the East, from the West, from third world countries, from, it's such a broad expanse of humanity that is responding to music and that are responding to your work that you're doing with music and mindfulness. Do you have any rosy, cozy success stories of an interaction that you've had with a student or with a person who has bought your course that has kind of been an eye-opener for you, that really showed you that you're doing the right thing?
Oh, that's a great question.
Thank you.
I do. Yeah.
I'm a decent podcast host. Every once in a while I come up with a great question.
You're good at this. I do. There's a couple of people. So I'm officially kind of launching my course in the coming weeks here, but I have.
Tell us the name of it.
There to a few people. And I've had a couple of students say, man, like, okay, for example, there's one person who's finishing their album and said that the course really helped them, first of all, finish all their lyrics. They were very, very lyric driven and finished to the point where they were really satisfied with them. And this particular person also said they are usually a member of a band and never really envisioned themselves or just didn't think they had the ability to be the front runner, the performer. And he said because of this course, he was starting to go, oh, I think I can do this. Maybe I can put my songs up there and be the front runner. And just hearing things like that or just, oh my goodness, I can't tell you how many people have got in touch with me and said, I used the little meditation. And then later that day, this idea just totally flowed to me. so great. I mean, that's the coolest. I mean, it's not like I invented meditation, but being able to connect the dots to help somebody.
Well, and having a course, having a curriculum, if you will, that then motivates people to use this time proven method called meditation.
Yeah.
You're actually pointing people in that direction, and they're reaping the benefits of that once they start doing it. And there is the beauty of your course. You're helping people, not just musicians, but people in general, or musicians, not just with their music, but with their lives. You're showing them how to open themselves up and be the true individual that they're supposed to be, because a lot of people suppress their true identity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what else I find is a big sort of a problem people run into? It's like they want to meditate or they want to use these techniques, but there's a little bit of that accountability or that little bit of, I want to, but where do I start?
Yeah.
You know, you could Google and a million different meditations come up. Which one's right for me and how long do I do it for? And so I'm hoping with my course, it will give people that guidance that they're looking for. And also the accountability and all the community. I think that's maybe the word I'm looking for. The community that, hey, you got a question? I have a private Facebook group. Ask away or ask me. You know, I'm there. I'm hopefully there for them every step of the way. So
I want to make sure that this gets out there so that people know what your course is called and where to find it, and specifically what they can gain. So if you had 5 minutes to pitch your course, what would you say? In other words, pitch your course now. Tell us what tell us what it's called, where do we find it, and what is it? What is the content?
So it's called the 5-Day Heart-Centered Songwriting Challenge. And this is for the songwriter, the artist, the musician who wants to get out of their head and into their heart. If they're struggling with anxiety or they want to put music out, but they're afraid, or they don't know where to start, or they're afraid of performing, or they've got, what's the word I'm looking for? Imposter syndrome, or self-doubt, or battling with that inner critic. All of those things, this is the place to start and find your solution. So in my Heart-Centered Songwriting Challenge, not only am I going to show you how to write a song, there's going to be a lot of people there who know how to write a song, and that's great too. Yeah. But I'm going to show you how to use these techniques in order to make that the absolute best that you can. And also, you know, when it comes time to performing, I'm going to show you those techniques so that you can just be your best self when it comes down to all of those things that are really nagging at you. And I know exactly what you're saying when you say we often suppress who we want to be. And for many, for quite a lot, I went through a lull for sure where I suppressed it. I just thought, it was fear. And honestly, when I spoke it out loud, I couldn't even believe it. I was telling a friend of mine, and I actually had to say it out loud, and I said it, and it came out, and we both thought that's the most ridiculous fear I've ever heard. Yeah. Just the inner things that were going on in my head. And once you can get and go past it, the whole world opens up to you, because you start to align with who you truly know you've been that whole time.
And then you'll find a lot of hidden strength in that. When you find out who you really are and what you're really supposed to be doing, now you're following your heart, and your heart is going to show you a lot of strength that you didn't have. Now, okay, so that's the name of your course, 5-Day Heart-Centered Songwriting Challenge. You've told us briefly what's in it. How do people find it? Okay,
so it's running October 26th to the 30th. I'm doing it live online, and it's free, and you can sign up, and there's replays because I know everyone's busy. To find it and register and find everything about me, you can go to www.musicandmindfulness.co. .co. Not to be confused with call. Musicandmindfulness.co. And that's where you can find everything. Come on and register and get some more information. And that's where you can find me.
I have a lot more questions for you. I'm going to ask them. But first, I want to say this to anyone who's watching or listening. You don't have to be a musician or a songwriter to take part in this. I highly recommend that it doesn't matter what you're doing in your life, that you jump into this, because Lisa's work, what Lisa's putting out there, can be applied to your life I'm telling you, I don't care who you are. I don't even have to know who you are. This can be applied to your life. It can help you realize a few things about yourself. It can put you in a position to where you're a little more aware of yourself, which will then make you a little bit more stable, a little stronger to help yourself and those around you. I just want to put am I right, Lisa? Is it okay that I say that?
Absolutely.
This is something that is, of course, for musicians primarily, but you can also step into this if you're not a musician.
Absolutely. There are so many benefits, and it really does sort of seep out into your life and your everyday life. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
And again, that is the thing that has always attracted me to what you're doing. I think I saw that right away, that this is something that anybody can use. Of course, musicians, but also non-musicians.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you about, imposter syndrome. That's a word or a phrase that's floating around out there, but not everybody knows what that is. Tell me what imposter syndrome is, and how does that apply to musicians, and how does it apply to the everyday man and woman in the street?
So imposter syndrome is, and I hope I'm getting this right, but I believe it's when you just basically don't believe that you have or have earned the, let's say, the title that you've given yourself.
Like radio show host?
No, yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, for example. But imposter syndrome would be like, that's your title, but you just don't believe you are nearly good enough, or you don't have the qualifications. And who am I to be? It's very much, who am I?
Yeah.
Who am I to be speaking on the radio? Who am I? It's this confidence thing, this internal conflict of maybe someone as a kid was telling you all along, you're no good. You would never make it a day in radio, right?
Yep.
And so even though you've climbed so hard and worked so hard, and here you are with that job and that title, there's this little voice in your head that's saying, really, who am I to be doing this on the radio? And so many people struggle with that in many different facets and jobs and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. That deserving, that, you know.
Well, and a lot of children too. A lot of children as well. There was a time when I was working as a teacher, and I would see this in kids to where they were saying things about themselves, imposter syndrome. I wasn't familiar with the term at that time.
Yeah.
But I still addressed it, because I would have a kid who would just say some of the most terrible things about themselves. Oh, I'm not smart enough to do that. Mm-hmm. Or why did you pick me for this project, John? I'm not smart enough. There's other students who are smarter, things like that. And I would say to them, how would you feel if your fellow students were spreading rumors that you were dumb? If they were saying, Billy is so stupid, or Nancy, what a dummy. How would you feel if those rumors were going around? And every one of them would answer, I'd be upset. That's a terrible thing. I said, well, then why are you putting that out there? You're saying that.
About your own self.
About yourself. Yeah. About yourself. Imposter syndrome. I never made the connection at that time, but it's a thing. And I believe that it gets in the way of a lot of happiness for people.
I think so too. And I think a lot of people are, they're very much deserving and worthy of so much more than they give themselves credit for.
Yeah. I think even the most aware among us, people like you and I who meditate, people like you and I who, use terms like imposter syndrome, people who are in that mindset, we still can have moments where we're too harsh on ourselves, where we become practitioners of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
We become less of a friend to ourselves and more of an enemy.
Yep.
We do little things that are self-limiting. So wouldn't it then be a wise thing to, jump into courses like what you're offering, become constant practitioners of meditation, because then we empower ourselves to recognize these moments of less than positivity towards ourselves.
Absolutely. I just feel like only good can come of it. It all starts and stops with you. And funny, I actually just remembered this is a kind of a good story to tell about this imposter syndrome, and that sort of finding that self I don't want to say self-love. It sounds a little bit cheesy, but let's go with self-love.
Oh, self-love is
Like,
a
what
thing.
else can we
That's
call
a
it?
thing. It's legitimate. It's
Yeah.
cheesy, but we like a little cheese every now and then.
We're good with it. Yeah. So a little while ago, I posted something in a Facebook group, a very large musicians Facebook group. Honestly can't remember even what it was, but let's just put it this way. A really mean lady wrote these terrible things. She was saying comments under it like, who is this woman to be giving advice? She doesn't have a number one hit record, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm human. So of course honest to goodness, my first thought was like, oh my God, she's right.
Oh.
Like I started thinking, oh my God, who am I? Yeah. So all these other people were so positive and thank you for offering this bit of help that you've posted. And she was like, who is this girl? And it did sting for a little bit. And I sat with it and I was like, how am I really honestly wanted to message back, like not something mean, but just sort of challenging her.
Yeah. Yeah. Step in front of it.
Yeah. And like, well, what, anyway, just kind of challenge her on it. But I made myself not do it. That was very hard.
Yeah.
And I took some time and, it sat with me for a day or so. And then I let it go. And honestly, I'm just saying all this because of all of these mindfulness techniques. I flipped it around and I used affirmations and I sort of talked myself through it. And normally that would probably for sure get someone down in the dumps for a really long time. And honestly, they might just stop everything.
Sure, absolutely.
It's really hurtful. I realize it's not me. It's this lady. I realize I love to think at her other posts in this group and stuff. She's so negative and so mean and probably just some hurting person. Like,
yeah.
Right. So just let it go. But yeah, that's easy to slip into that, back to that imposter syndrome.
Was there a time where that type of comment affected you in a different way? You were down in the dumps for days, weeks at a time.
Yeah, I am a very, very sensitive person.
Yeah.
And I feel things, I feel like on a bit of a deeper level. I don't know. I'm sure than not the average Joe. There's a lot of sensitive people out there, but
sure.
Yeah. And maybe not weeks, but actually, you know what? Yeah. In the long run, it would probably stick with me a lot longer. Like it would, because this is the problem. Things get stuck in your subconscious.
Sure they do.
And you don't even realize you're thinking them.
There can be a delayed effect with that negative experience online where you think you're done. You're kind of proud of yourself. Hey, I'm not going to fall into imposter syndrome, and you're done with it. I put it in air quotes, done with it almost right away. But then, and I'm speaking of myself now, but then maybe a couple of weeks or even a month or two later, all of a sudden something clicks and I'm thinking about that exchange, that online exchange or that face-to-face exchange that I had that I thought I was done with, but apparently I'm not. So we're only human, meditation, mindfulness, knowing oneself does not mean that you're immune to these things, but it's all about having the training. Can I say?
It's like tools in your tool.
Yeah.
It's to like pull them out. To go through these ups and downs.
Yeah, to pull out those tools when you need them, and that will get you through. That will keep you from wallowing in the negativity. Of course, we're all going to be touched and affected by negativity, but the question is to what degree and for how long?
Exactly. Because you're right. I have a hard time generally getting over, like I would have been very distracted all day from that sort of comment and for the next few days. And I would almost like put other things aside because it's like, oh my gosh, maybe they're right. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And it was such a faster, smoother transition. And that's just it. We will go all through these crazy things, no matter who you are in your life, what you're going through, you're going to have these hard times.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Yep. You're
going to need these tools. And instead of waiting, again, like going through this hard time, you're not going to go quickly Google, what do I do? Because you're stuck in the dumps already.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. If you want to be proactive, you get ahead of it.
Well, life is a journey. It's not one event. It's a series of events.
Yeah. And
each event is an opportunity to learn. Each event is an opportunity to fail, because failure is not, let me ask you, can you actually become a good songwriter by writing bad songs?
Yeah, that's how you do it, I'm sure, right?
Right?
My song, yeah, like you got to do it, because to do anything well, you got to do it a lot.
Yes.
You just got to do it over and over. You got to start somewhere, and you got to write and then edit and write and edit, and keep writing.
What is your process? You talk about writing and editing. I probably write differently than you do. How normal is it for you to edit songs, and how much editing can there be on the average for you for any given song?
I definitely will edit. I think the more you do it and the more you learn, it's not like you do less editing. I think you just get that better internal knowing of what sits better and what doesn't. And what's I'll keep working at something until it feels really, really good. And there was a time for a long time when I wasn't doing, I would just settle. Like, that sounds good enough.
Yeah,
and now
yeah.
I will push until I know it sort of like locks in.
Yeah.
I feel like it feels really good.
But you probably have a different procedure when you're writing with someone else with a deadline. I'm going to assume that what you're saying now is your process when you're writing for yourself, right? It's probably going to be something different if you're sitting in a room with another writer and there's a deadline.
Yeah, when you're writing with somebody else, and then they've got their opinions and thoughts too, right? So you might want to change a line and they don't.
Yeah.
And whatever, right? So you do have to. That's a different way of rolling with the punches, and which ones are you going to really fight for, and what's not really worth fighting for because they have a different perspective, and maybe it is.
I'm interested in seeing how I would do in writing with another lyricist. All of the writing I do is either for my own project or I'm writing for others, but they've supplied the music and they want me to work on the lyrics. So I'm alone in that lyric writing process no matter what. I've never actually sat down with another lyricist to write a song.
To see if it works or if it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I'm curious because that would be a new challenge for me. That would be a humongous challenge to me. I don't know how I would, I have no idea how I would have to adjust things to write with another lyricist. I just don't know what that would be. I'm not saying it can't happen. I just don't know. I'm not familiar with it. And it fascinates me. I have yet to have had the opportunity to do that, but that's something I'm looking forward to, actually.
That would be interesting for you to try.
It'll be a growth for me as a writer.
Say you've tried it. Yeah, that would be. But the first thing that came to mind would be, you'll just have to leave ego to the side, because that's the hard part, right? When you think, not you in general, like I think I'm right, or I think this is the right thing.
Yeah. And then somebody else says,
let the song win. It's not who did the line or what.
Yeah.
It's just like you want to have the best song.
Are you primarily focused on your own music at this time, or do you have projects going with other writers?
I do have a couple of projects going with other writers, but yeah, I'm mostly focused on my own music. Just writing towards doing some more singles. And I enjoy it. And honestly, you know what? Even doing all this music and mindfulness is also pretty time consuming. So that seems to be my main focus right now. But you're just enjoying it. You're not burnt out. You've got so many things going. Do you ever feel burnt out? Do you ever need to take a break? Oh yeah, that's good that you say that. I'm totally enjoying it, but I always allow myself to take a break. For better or worse. I do find, if you get too much, you could start to feel yourself. Burnout is a good way of doing it, saying it. You have to take those breaks, like, go out for some fresh air, or if you mean like an actual longer period of time break. Yeah, you have to be aware of that too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I look at it. I look at it in the context of an athlete. When the athletes that never take a physical break from their training, whatever kind of training it is, they get injured. They get burnt out, and that manifests itself with injuries. So burning out as a writer or as a musician will manifest itself as a stoppage in the practicing of your art, or at least a warping of your productivity, which then it'll be a snowball effect. I know what you're saying now. Yes. Yeah. Because there was a time when I was writing so much that, you kind of show up and it's like there's nothing left, because you're not really taking the time to recharge, because sometimes those ideas are
they're coming together when you're not writing and when you're
Right.
not
Yes.
thinking about it. So
Okay.
that's all part of the process. I've learned to give myself some slack in that sense that, yeah, you don't, I mean, unless you want to and you have that inspiration to go at it every day and all that. That's
Yeah.
great. Go with that.
Sure.
Go with that flow.
Sure.
But it's also okay to step away. And isn't that a fine line though, right? Momentum.
Well, yeah, you want to listen to the muse when it shows up. You want to do something with that inspiration. But for me, for my writing is so personal, and it's so emotional, and that leads to a physical and mental drain to a certain degree, to where if I have this marathon writing session that can go over a period of days, where song after song is coming and it's getting written down and I'm satisfied with it, and then it's actually getting used. And I find that in general, there will come a point to where I'm like, I have to stop. Not necessarily that the ideas are not there. The well isn't necessarily drying up.
No.
But the winch that's pulling up the bucket out of that well is getting a little rusty and it needs some lube. And
totally.
Yeah, so something, and I can't put words on it, something just tells me I need to stop and breathe for a while. And I'm just
breathing. I was going to say that.
Yeah. Stop and breathe for a while. And that can be, taking, just maybe 10 or 15 minutes to stop thinking about music and just meditate on nothing. That can also be a period of a day or two. That can also be a period of a week where I just need to step away. But I used to fight against that, to where I would be feeling like, you've got to write.
Yeah.
This artist or this band needs their lyrics. You've got to write it, and you've got to write it now. And I'm so glad that I've gotten over that, because now the writing process is entirely peaceful for me, whereas before there could be moments of stress.
Yeah.
To where I felt like I had to, yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It can be, and our culture is so go and produce and, make things happen and burn yourself out. That's, you're not living the dream until you're totally burnt out kind of thing, where you're at the top of the game. But I'll tell you, it's definitely more peaceful and smoother when you can take a minute to breathe, and literally, like you say, physically breathing, even taking that time to do that makes a huge difference. I just finished telling my daughter this week, she's 8. And when she gets her mind set on something, it's like she just goes with it. And she was practicing basketball, I think. But it was at the end of the day, and I knew she was tired, and I knew she'd already kind of like given it her all, and she wanted to keep playing. And I said, you know what? Sometimes I'm still excited about my project. I still want to go and do it, but I know my body is saying it's time to take a breather, because once I come back to it refreshed, I'll be able to do it twice as good. You'll lose your focus, right?
Yes.
Shooting those basketballs, you're not going to get them in the net because you're tired, and you need that. You just need a little bit of, maybe you need something to eat, or you need a little break. Same goes with anything.
Well, it's a balancing act, and it boils down to knowing yourself.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Back to mindfulness. Yeah.
Because some people can push through, and that's, someone explained to me once, we all have a plate, for example. Like people say, my plate is too full. Some people have a really large plate and they can fill it, and that's good, and they're comfortable with that. That's how they work. Like they're good to go.
Yeah.
When you learn how big your plate is and how full you can fill it, it's really empowering, because it's okay to say, ooh, my plate is too full. I don't think I can do that. I'm just not that kind of person. Not everybody is the same. Not everybody can push themselves through that much.
Yeah.
All the time. Some people can.
Well,
knowing yourself.
Well, it's a fascinating line of work that you're into, and you must feel blessed. You must know that what you're doing is important work, not just for yourself, not for any type of, well, of course there's financial gain. We have to make a living, but you must know that you are literally helping people to change their lives. Whether it's that musician who has yet to have written that hit song that may be able to finance their true entry into the music business. There's a lot of musicians who haven't been able to get into the music business, and your work that you're doing may help someone to do just that, someone who otherwise may not have been heard. Yeah. And if that just happens to one person who then writes that song that could possibly be heard by millions, there's a lot of lives that are, if not changed, they're at least affected by the work that you're doing. I think that's fascinating. Do you ever think about that? Do you ever feel the weight of that? Or is it a weight?
No,
is it rather a cloud of helium that's lifting you up? I don't know.
I think it's lifting me up. And I never really thought of it like that, how you say it. The odd time I'll think about it like that. But you're right. I mean, it's funny because I came at it as a perspective of it's helped me. I believe in this stuff. Surely it'll help other people.
Yeah.
But you're right. When you think of that trickle effect, that is really powerful. I just know when you align with the thing that you're supposed to be doing and it feels right, everything kind of, the path sort of opens up for you. And I am feeling the path open up. So
it's beautiful. I love it.
It is. Yeah. I'm so grateful that I can even do it and bring it to, bring it to other people.
Well, it is fascinating. Very often we just kind of do our thing. We write our songs, we perform them, but every once in a while, I think it does a musician well to stop, lean back and think, what is the meaning of all this? Not only how is it affecting yourself, but how is it affecting others? And I think we're allowed to feel good about that. I don't think there's any arrogance in that. I think on the other hand, I think it's quite humbling if musicians stop and think of how many people they're potentially, and I say potentially because you never know, but potentially affecting. It's quite humbling. And I think it will then give us a different view or a different angle of attack when we go into our craft and start writing songs. It's fascinating.
Because it's all about connection, right?
Yeah.
Even as a young girl, I always knew and always told myself inside that, even if I positively affect one person doing this song or whatever, then that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So when you kind of think of it that way, because that's what we're all looking for. We really are all just looking for connection to each other, to ourselves, to know that it's like whenever you meet someone that, hey, I'm like that too, all of a sudden there's that connection and it's like we all help each other.
Well, what about affirmation? Affirmations. You make the connection, but then you need, how important or how necessary is it that people, how much positive feedback do you have to get? Or are you secure in what you're doing?
Are you asking me personally?
Yeah. How dependent are you on feedback? Because you come across as extremely confident in what you're doing, and you should be. But underneath that, how much insecurity is there? Because the need for that positive feedback, can that be directly tied to insecurity? And if so, how much of that do you have? I'm asking the tough questions today.
I was going to say, this is a good question. I do have confidence, but I definitely am relying on feedback because if it's all falling on deaf ears, maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. I am looking for, just someone to say, this really worked for me, or this is really helping me. I do. And as I get older, I realize that I am looking for that, sort of that. It's bouncing off and it's coming back. Okay, yes, that's working. Otherwise, maybe I'm putting my message out wrong, right? It's just making you self-reflect.
Yeah.
So I am looking for some of that outside affirmation. And I also have to keep so the confidence comes from the inside affirmation that I have to make myself do.
Yeah.
And then the rest is, for sure looking for that outside.
Well, again, I'll do my part in giving you some affirmation. I think what you're doing is fantastic. Just the thought of how many people can be affected by this it warms my very soul. I love what you're doing, and you will have my eternal support in what you're doing. I'm so glad to have you on my podcast and on my radio show. Before we wrap it up, I want to ask you two things. And I don't remember if I did this the last time you were on my podcast, but I'm going to do it now. I'm going to say 3 words, and then I want you to finish the sentence for me with no thought. Okay. Just finish the sentence. Okay. 1 sentence, okay?
Okay.
Lisa McEwen is
I was just gonna say a singer-songwriter.
period, or
That's
is
the
there?
first thing that came to my mind.
Well, okay, period. But is it period, or is there a comma and then a little bit more?
Singer-songwriter, mother. I almost just said conduit.
Ah,
It just came to me. Conduit.
if it came to you, then you should say it.
Good
Yeah.
energy. Conduit of good energy, because I'm so, it's so precious to me. Good energy. So
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. Lisa McEwen is a singer, songwriter, mother, and conduit. I love it.
yeah,
I like that.
these are good.
I like it.
This is not coming from my thinking. This is sort of just.
Well, that's just coming from the heart, coming from the soul.
Don't judge me.
Don't judge me.
Don't judge these crazy words that are coming from me. They're just coming from the heart.
Now, the second thing I like to do, like you to do for me before we wind this up, I know how motivating you are. I know how inspiring you are. That's why I have you on my show.
Thank you.
Can you show people now that I'm not wrong by saying something? What do you think people need to hear? I've got listeners and I've got viewers on YouTube. What do you think, is there something you can say to lift people up and help them down this road that we call life? What can you say to them?
I think I'm going to say that the first thing that came to me was that you can do it. And when you get to a place of believing that you can do it, that's where it all starts. And another thought that came to me, or an image came to me, is that we are really all these little scared children inside. It's like we maybe physically grow up, but inside we're still those young kids that have these huge hopes and dreams. And as we get older, maybe we realize, man, I didn't do the things I said I was going to do. Is to just speak gently to yourself and take the time to get into that believing place that you really can do it. Whatever that is. It might be small or it might be huge. Like, I feel like people could be listening right now who are just having a really terrible day. And maybe when I say you can do it, all that means is you can make dinner tonight. Like, maybe that's a big stretch for you because you're so down in the dumps.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I just want them to know the cool thing is when you believe you can do it and then you do it, you start realizing that's just the beginning.
People need to roll around in that feeling for a while, really feel it. What does it feel like to have achieved this thing that you thought was almost impossible to do?
Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful. I wonder what would happen for you if you were to ever make, I'm just going to put this out there. If you were to ever make the decision to become a motivational speaker and go out there on a circuit and talk like this to people.
You are not the first person to say this. I have someone else who bugs me.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
That this is what I should be doing. So it's interesting you say that.
Well, that's two of us now that have said that. We'll see what happens. All this.
I would love that. I love it. I love connecting with people. I love encouraging people. I love getting encouragement from other people.
Yeah. The best place and probably the easiest place to get started if you want to be a speaker is in the school system.
Yeah.
With kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Teenage, like high school.
Yeah. Which I'm no stranger of because I go to my kids' schools and I've written their school song and I go and
oh, did you? Yeah.
But not in, I know what you're saying, not in a sense of
yeah. Well, just an idea I threw out there. All of a sudden you'll be, I'll see a billboard somewhere here in Norway and Lisa McEwen is coming to Oslo at the Oslo Forum and you'll have a concert and a motivational speech afterwards. How's that?
Wouldn't that be?
How's that for a booking?
There you go. Look, I'm going to set my sights on that next. Just add that to my old to-do list.
Hey, speak it into existence.
You got it. I love that.
Listen, Lisa, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. I'm glad we actually got it done. All of these technical problems that we had when we actually were trying to do this episode, but we got it done, and I'm so glad. I predict that for me, because now it's 6:00 in the evening here in Norway, I predict that for me it's going to be very hard to sleep tonight because you've given me so much to think about. So I'm just going to embrace that. I'm going to be up late tonight thinking about some of the things that we've talked about and how I can apply it to my life. And I hope that my viewers and listeners do the same.
John, thank you for having me. You are a bright light, and I'm just thankful that we've connected.
So am I, Lisa. I call you friend. I call you sister. I'm glad you're in my life. I'm glad you're on my program. Thank you so much,
Likewise.
Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lisa McEwen, everybody.